Hello, this is Dr. Dickinson, and we'll be looking at our Unit 1 lesson. And in our first unit, we're going to be talking about the atmosphere. And what that really means is our social learning environment and how that influences today's 21st century learner. So we know that times are changing. Things aren't certainly the way they were when you were growing up. And for the new learner in the classroom is a new environment. What they're exposed to now in classroom is much different than 5, 10, 15 years ago. We have whiteboards, PowerPoints, smartboards, iPads, iPods, iTouches, and a host of different applications that the students can use to do video, web, or other types of presentations. So the way that we communicate, share information, and receive information shapes our learning. It shapes how we teach and how we try to engage our learner and motivate them to participate in the classroom activity. So we're going to watch a quick video about how technology has influenced learning from a social perspective. And many of you might have seen this is the Did You Know video. And there is some music here. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. So we know that we're living in exponential times. Information is coming at us at a rapid pace. The population is shifting. It's changing. No longer are where are we working in an economy where we're competing on a local level? We're competing on a global level now for jobs and opportunities. So speaking of jobs, we see that there's a shift in the mix of jobs in the economy. So the yellow bars indicate the 1969, and the most current reading is from 1999. Here, we see a dramatic decrease in the number of blue-collar workers and a greater demand for technicians, professionals, managers, and administrators. So more of that higher level types of position is increasing. So again, with these types of tasks, we see they're changing the economy, and they're also changing what our roles are in the workforce, moving from routine thinking, very industrial age, where you have this very procedural approach to working to more complex communication, expert thinking, what are those higher end Bloom's taxonomy, analyzing, synthesizing, creating. So we see this shift in the types of jobs and the expectations of jobs. And we know that workers can now work anywhere. I mean, we're taking this class, this is a virtual class, and you're in the comfort of your home. So with technology, we're able to shift the way that we work and who we work with. So we're seeing a lot of changes that are happening in the past 10, 15, 20 years. So what implications does this have for our students? Why do we need to think about this information? Well, we know that we can collaborate with different kinds of people and share our work with different kinds of knowledge than ever before. We also know that our students are going to be competing more in a global market. So there's going to be people from around the world that are competing for these same jobs. We also know that the demographics are changing. Our students are becoming more and more diverse in the classroom. And you see here in terms of minorities, which would be non-white, there's a shift. By 2050, it was predicting that minorities will actually be the majority. And this is much different than 2008, where it was only about 34%. So some more statistics in terms of diversity. So just by 2023, the school-age population in which the minorities will become the majority. So for teachers, this is how we need to think about who our students are going to be and how we teach them and what are the best practices for working with students that are considered the minorities. So we're going to have a very culturally diverse school-age population. We're also seeing that occupations are requiring more education. So there's a greater growth in positions in which you are required to have a bachelor's degree at least or higher. And this is a percent of change by 2016. We also are predicting that by 2016, 2/3 of all new jobs will require post-secondary education or training. So again, the emphasis on the types of skills that we really need our students to have so that they can be college and career ready. And that really ties into the shift that we see in the standards that are being implemented in our schools with the Common Core. And as we know, the earning potential is far greater for those who do have advanced degrees than for those who fail to complete high school, where it's negative 10% with high school dropout versus 53% increase. And as we saw in the video, we also know that the more educated, the more prepared our students are, the more this is going to impact our economic growth. So we really need to think about it from a national level, that the education that we give our children is really going to have a major impact on our nation. We'll see the predictions here is that the gross domestic product would be 5% higher 32 years from now. That would be enough to pay for the entire K-12 education. Pretty amazing. And that's just if we improve our performance. Right now, I believe in the TIM study, which is an international study, the United States ranked 25th in math and science. So we certainly have a lot of growth, and that's 25th out of all developed countries. So we want to really emphasize critical thinking. We want our students to be able to synthesize ideas to build new solutions, identify and assess key elements of a situation, so some problem solving there, defining a problem and explore solutions. So what are the potential ways that we can resolve a problem? We also want our students to use data and facts to evaluate a situation and hypothesize implications. So getting our students to really think about what they're doing in the classroom, making judgments that are based and grounded in data and facts to support their ideas. We also want them to devise recommendations that are grounded in knowledge and understanding, and apply skills and knowledge to new contexts. So a lot of what we're seeing here are ways that we can have our students to think critically, explore, and really, acquire information but master it. So we're moving away from that really basic knowledge level of understanding to moving to more complex ideas such as analyzing and synthesizing and creating. So that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort on the part of the teacher. When we think about it from a processing theory in terms of cognitive psychology, think about the information processing theory, this approach really does make sense. We know that when students are in the classroom, that the first information they received gets registered in their sensory memory, which is everything they see, they hear, their visual images, tactile, so on and so forth. In order for them to get that information into their working memory, i.e. their short-term memory, they need to make sure that they're paying attention. There needs to be that selection. So rather than being gazing out the window and looking at the birds fly, they need to have their attention on what the teacher's doing or what's happening in the classroom in order to actually learn the information. Once students are able to acquire that information, they're going to put that in their working memory. Now, in their working memory, there's that verbal information is being processed as well as visual. But we know that the working memory, not all the information is going to be registered into their long-term memory. Some of that information is going to decay, some of that information is going to be forgotten, and some of that information will move into their long-term memory. So really see that piece about metacognition there, which is that thinking about thinking. So the more we can get our students to really think about what they're doing, we can get them to make a connection with prior knowledge or other existing information and apply it, the more likely that information is going to move from their working to their long-term memory. We see the two different types of knowledge in their long-term memory, which is semantic, which is declarative knowledge, procedural knowledge. This is, how to solve a long division problem. To more episodic knowledge, which is our experiences, our memories, celebrating a birthday party or going on a field trip. So that's the information that gets stored in our long-term memory. So we know that if we want our students to really learn information, we really need to make it meaningful. So here's another slide we can think about in terms of having our students think critically. We always want to ask them, what is the goal? What is the goal of why we're here, what we're hoping to achieve and learn? And then what are the dispositions students need in order to reach that goal? So i.e., if their goal is to get 100% on a test, then what dispositions will they need to have? Well, you ask the students, what do you need to do to get a good grade on your test? Well, you're going to take good notes, you're going to study, you're going to turn in your homework. Real basic things that we think about all the times. But we have to remember that these are students, they're children, they're learning. They're learning not just the information that we give them in the classroom, but they're also learning strategies to be successful. So it's up to us as teachers to teach our students to think critically, to teach our students to set goals, and to teach them to think about these goals, reflect on these goals, self-regulate is what it's really referred to from a psychological, motivational, educational perspective. And so we get them to think about these dispositions and what they need to do, challenges that they have, and then finally ask them to think about what skills will they need to reach that goal, and then reflect on that. Have you reached the goal? Yes or why? Why not? What do you need to do then? And that's really what is going to help students in terms of motivating them to stay on task, to be persistent, and to keep setting goals in their lives so that they can be college and career ready. So we have a culture of thinking here, and we really want to make sure that we are doing certain strategies in our classroom so that students are thinking about thinking. We want to model what the strategy is. So if I'm going to use a strategy like metacognition, I might say, well, I think the author here is trying to show us that, and so on and so forth. And then I'll explain my thinking. Well, I think the author feels this way because I'm going to have an opportunity to interact with my students and ask them, well, what do you think? Do you think this makes sense? Why or why not? And then I'm going to provide feedback based on their responses. So again, we're moving towards a culture of thinking because we know that from our earlier slides that there's a greater demand for jobs and positions where students really need to think critically. How do we get our students to do that? Well, there's the language of thinking, the thinking about thinking. Then there's dispositions that I talked about earlier, getting them to self-reflect, getting them to set goals, getting them to monitor their progress. We have specific strategies that they're going to implement. Maybe they're going to keep a journal or a log every day and just write down one or two things that they learned. There's going to be that self-direction that comes into play, and a lot of that happens with having those episodic experiences of success. So the more we can self-direct students, give them some autonomy, some choice, some novelty in the classroom, the more empowered they're going to be to achieve their goals. And then again, we want to make sure that our tasks are higher order tasks and they allow for transfer. So what we mean by transfer is tasks that students can apply to the real world. Maybe it's a task such as finding a percent of a number that they could apply in another context. So as teachers, we can reflect on what we're doing in the classroom by asking ourselves, are our students thinkers and analyzers? Are we getting them to think like informed consumers and reading information critically? Are students problem solvers? Do we give them an opportunity to design new ideas, be creative and innovative in their solutions? We also want to make sure that our participants are asking those critical questions. So again, you might need to model that with students. If you have specifically a large population of English language learners, you might need to model what are critical questions so that students learn what those questions are. And then we want to make sure that we give our students an opportunity to become leaders, to express their ideas with data and facts. Well, thank you for being part of our first presentation, and I look forward to seeing you at our first course meeting.